Boy helps stranger with flat tire, without knowing he was a millionaire who would transform his life forever. It was a Thursday like any other for Michael Evans, a boy of only 10 years, until he saw a man of approximately 50 years wearing a shirt with rolled-up sleeves and expensive dress pants, who appeared frustrated as he examined the completely flat rear tire. The man, who introduced himself as Robert, was repeatedly looking at his cell phone, unsuccessfully searching for a signal that didn't exist in that remote area. "Do you need help, sir?" asked Michael, braking his worn-out bicycle. Robert looked up, surprised by the boy's sudden presence. His face showed the weariness of someone not accustomed to dealing with unexpected situations. "I'm trying to call a tow truck, but there seems to be no signal here," he replied with an accent that revealed his city origins. Michael got off his bicycle, approaching the car with curiosity in his eyes. "You can only get signal near the church, mister, but the town is about 4 miles away. You can use my bicycle if you want. I'll wait here with your car." Robert frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of accepting help from an unknown child. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. Wouldn't your parents be worried?" "My mom works late today at the garment factory and won't be back until evening. It's no problem." Robert hesitated again, looking at the destroyed tire and then at the simple bicycle, apparently too fragile to support his weight. "I appreciate the intention, young man, but I think I'll wait for someone to pass by or walk until I find a signal." It was at that moment that Michael said he wanted to help with small gestures to improve the world, and opened his torn backpack and took out a hardcover notebook whose pages were worn at the edges from being leafed through so much. He said, "Here are all the ideas I've thought of to make the world better. There's even a project to stop people from throwing trash in the river's source." Robert, more out of politeness than interest, accepted the notebook. As he turned the pages, his expression changed. Colorful drawings of community gardens, rainwater collection systems, and even a mobile library that could operate in an old VW bus. Each idea had a title written in careful letters and detailed descriptions of how it would work. "This is impressive, Michael," said Robert, genuinely surprised. "Where did you learn about these things?" "At school, at the public library's internet, and also from my grandpa before he went away," replied the boy, avoiding the word that meant permanent absence. "He always said we don't need to wait until we're adults to have good ideas." Something in that phrase seemed to deeply affect Robert. He looked at the notebook, at the boy, and then at the bicycle. After a long silence, he said, "You know, I think I'll accept your offer after all. I promise to take good care of your bicycle." Michael smiled, proud. "Just pedal slowly on the downhills. The brake sometimes fails a little bit." Robert awkwardly mounted the bicycle that was too small for his size, and after a few uncertain pedals, found his balance and continued down the road. He promised to return as quickly as possible. The boy sat in the shade of a nearby maple tree, taking from his backpack a package of cookies and an adventure book borrowed from the library. Time passed slowly while the pages of the book transported Michael to distant worlds. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Almost 2 hours later, the sound of a truck approaching woke the boy from his reading. It was a tow truck, followed closely by Robert, pedaling the bicycle back. The man was coming down the road with more ease than when he had departed. "I got help in town," explained Robert, returning the bicycle. "And I bought a snack for you. I figured you might be hungry." Michael received the sandwich and soda with a wide smile. While the mechanic changed the car's tire, Robert sat down next to the boy in the same welcoming shade. "I saw more of your notebook while waiting in line at the tire shop," he commented. "There are some ideas in there that could actually work." "You know?" The boy's eyes sparkled. "You think so? Ms. Jennifer says I have an inventor's mind, but the other boys think I'm weird." "Weird is someone who can't see the value of good ideas," replied Robert, with a seriousness that surprised even himself. "Have you shown this notebook to anyone else besides your teacher?" "I showed it to Principal Sarah once. She liked the garden project, but said the school doesn't have money." Robert nodded thoughtfully. He asked where Michael studied, the full name of the school, and a few other details that seemed casual, but which the boy answered enthusiastically, happy to have someone interested in his ideas. When the mechanic finished changing the tire, Robert paid him generously and turned to say goodbye to the boy. "Thank you very much for your help today, Michael. You reminded me of something important I had forgotten." "What?" asked the boy. Curious. Robert smiled. "That sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places." He made a gesture to return the notebook, but the boy shook his head. "You can keep it a bit longer if you want. I have another one at home." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am. You're the first grown-up who didn't think my ideas were silly." Robert accepted the notebook with reverence, carefully placing it inside his leather briefcase. He got into the car, waved one last time, and departed, leaving only a cloud of red dust on the dirt road. Michael returned home pedaling, with a strange feeling that something important had happened, although he didn't know exactly what. Arriving home, the small residence of exposed brick and ceramic roof was empty as he expected. His mother, Miss Linda, would only return at night from the garment factory where she worked as a seamstress. That night, when telling about the man, from the road, his mother gently reprimanded him for talking to strangers and lending his bicycle, but there was something in her son's distant gaze that made her ask, "Was he at least kind to you?" "He was," replied Michael thoughtfully. "He was the first person who read my entire notebook and didn't say I was dreaming too big." Miss Linda smiled with a hint of sadness. Her son had always had that fertile imagination, that desire to transform the world that she feared life would eventually dissipate. "Let's see if this man really comes back as he promised," she said without much conviction. But Michael was no longer listening. In his mind, he was designing a new project for his spare notebook, a simple system to fix flat tires using accessible materials that anyone could carry on a bicycle. 2 weeks passed without any sign of the man from the road. At Lincoln Elementary School, where Michael was in 5th grade, everything followed its usual routine. Overcrowded classrooms, fans, that worked at half capacity, scratched desks and a library with few books, most already quite worn from use. It was a Monday when Principal Sarah entered the 5th grade classroom, accompanied by a man of approximately 30 years, wearing jeans and a dress shirt. "Good morning, children. This is Mr. Lucas, a representative from the New Horizons Foundation. They have chosen our school for a pilot improvement project, and Mr. Lucas will be with us for a few days to learn about our needs." The students looked with curiosity at the visitor, who smiled and waved discreetly. Michael, however, was distracted, scribbling ideas in a new notebook, a gift he had received from Ms. Linda when he completed the previous collection. During recess, while the others ran to the playground, Michael remained seated under the only large tree on the school grounds, focused on his drawing of an irrigation system for the garden he dreamed of building. "That's an interesting plan," said a voice above him. Michael looked up, finding himself face to face with the foundation representative. "Thank you," he replied shyly, "but Principal Sarah said there's no money for this." Lucas sat on the bench next to the boy. "And if there were money, do you think the other students would like the idea?" "Some would," Michael shrugged. "Jason and Maria have already said they would help, and Ms. Jennifer too." Murmured Lucas, making notes on a clipboard. "And what other ideas do you have to improve the school?" Michael's eyes lit up. He turned a few pages in his notebook and showed a detailed drawing. "A bigger library with computers for us to research. And also a science room with real microscopes, not just pictures in books." Lucas smiled, noting everything with genuine interest. "Did you know that the foundation I represent is specifically looking for schools with innovative projects coming from the students themselves?" "Really?" Michael asked, suspicious. It was hard to believe that someone would actually care about the ideas of a 10-year-old boy. "Very seriously. In fact, that's why we chose this school." Lucas paused, observing the boy carefully. "Someone told us about a very creative boy who studies here and has a notebook full of interesting projects." Michael frowned, confused. "Who said that?" Lucas smiled mysteriously. "A mutual friend, let's say." In the following days, Lucas visited all the classrooms, talked with teachers and staff, and spent hours meeting with Principal Sarah. Coincidentally or not, He always seemed to find time to talk with Michael during breaks, asking specific questions about his projects, requesting details, suggesting small adjustments. On Friday, when everyone expected the representative's farewell, came the announcement that shook the entire school. The New Horizons Foundation had approved a complete package of improvements for Lincoln Elementary, with work beginning in just 2 weeks. As part of the process, explained Principal Sarah in an assembly with all the students, an improvement council will be formed with participation of 3 students, 3 teachers, 2 parents, and 2 staff members to monitor the work and suggest adjustments to the project. To the surprise of many and the emotion of some, especially Ms. Jennifer, Michael was named one of the student representatives, along with Maria from 4th grade and Jason, his classmate. That afternoon, upon returning home, Michael could barely contain his excitement as he told his mother the news. "But what do you mean, son?" Ms. Linda asked, suspicious. "These foundations don't usually appear out of nowhere offering money, especially in small places like Oakville." "Mr. Lucas said it was someone who recommended the school," Michael replied, filling a glass of water. "I think it was Ms. Jennifer. She always sends our projects to competitions." Ms. Linda shook her head, still suspicious, but seeing the genuine joy on her son's face, decided not to discourage the boy. "Well, if it's true, that's a good thing. That school has needed renovations for years." The following Monday, a small truck stopped in front of the school. Men in uniform began unloading construction materials, while an engineer talked with Principal Sarah. In the distance, leaning against a discreet black car, Lucas watched everything with a satisfied smile on his face. The weeks passed at an accelerated pace. The old storage room was transformed into a modern library, with new shelves, comfortable tables, and, to everyone's amazement, 5 computers with internet access. The outdoor area gained colorful benches, a renovated court, and a space dedicated, especially to the community garden designed by Michael. Throughout the process, the Improvement Council meetings took place twice a week, always with Lucas present, who seemed to pay special attention to Michael's suggestions. In one of these meetings, Jason asked directly, "Why did you choose our school? There are so many others needing help too." Lucas smiled, glancing briefly at Michael before answering, "Let's say we found something very rare here. People who not only dream of changes, but already have concrete plans on how to achieve them." Lucas's gaze met Michael's, and there, in that brief moment, the boy had a strange feeling, as if he already knew those eyes from somewhere. Ms. Jennifer, noticing the interaction, asked after the meeting, "Did you know each other before, Michael?" "No," replied the boy hesitantly. "At least I don't think so." The teacher shrugged. "It's funny how he always seems very interested in your ideas specifically. Whoever recommended our school seems to have spoken very highly of you." Michael went home that day thoughtful, mentally reviewing Lucas's face, trying to associate it with some memory. It was when, suddenly, the image of the man from the road with the flat tire flashed in his mind. No, it couldn't be. Or could it? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next day after class, Michael gathered courage and approached Lucas in the school parking lot. "Do you know a man named Robert? One who had a flat tire on the Oakville Road a few weeks ago?" Lucas seemed genuinely surprised by the question. "Robert? I don't remember any Robert. Why?" "Nothing," replied Michael, a little disappointed. "It's just that he was interested in my idea notebook, just like you." Lucas smiled, putting his hand on the boy's shoulder. "It must be because good ideas always attract attention, no matter where they come from." Michael nodded, not entirely convinced, but let the subject drop. However, the seed of curiosity had already been planted, and the boy began to pay more attention to the details around him. The improvements at the school continued at a rapid pace. A week later, during a council meeting, Lucas announced that the foundation had approved an extension of the project. In addition to structural improvements, there would also be extracurricular workshops in robotics, programming, and sustainability. "And we'll need volunteers to teach some of these workshops," he explained, looking around the table. "Will you be one of the volunteers?" asked Maria, the 4th grade representative. Yes, I'll be responsible for the basic programming workshop, replied Lucas. And we've also invited a sustainability expert who agreed to come twice a month for the environmental projects workshop. Principal Sarah, who had been unusually quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. And does this expert have a name? Yes, he does, replied Lucas with a smile. Robert Sanders, he should start next week. Michael almost fell off his chair when he heard the name. His eyes widened, and he stared at Lucas with a mixture of surprise and accusation. The man just winked discreetly at the boy, as if they shared a secret. Miss Jennifer, noticing Michael's reaction, was intrigued. After the meeting, when Lucas had already left, she asked, "Do you know this Robert Sanders, Michael?" "I think so," replied the boy, still processing the information. "If it's who I'm thinking of, he's the man I helped." "On the road, the one with the flat tire." Jennifer frowned. "And he's going to teach sustainability classes here. What a strange coincidence, isn't it?" Michael nodded, increasingly convinced that something bigger was happening, something that went beyond simple coincidences. The next morning, Ms. Linda was surprised to find Principal Sarah waiting for her at the school gate, even before Michael entered for class. "Linda, can we talk for a minute?" asked Sarah, with a serious expression that immediately worried Michael's mother. "Of course, did something happen with Michael?" "Nothing with him directly," replied the principal, leading her to her office. "It's about this New Horizons Foundation and the school renovations." Once in the office, with the door closed, Sarah was direct. "Do you know who's behind these donations?" Ms. Linda shook her head, confused. "I have no idea. Michael mentioned a representative named Lucas, but that's all I know." "I didn't know either until yesterday," continued Sarah, opening a folder with documents. "When I received the official contracts for the second phase of the project, I decided to research a bit more about the foundation." She turned the laptop to show a website. "The New Horizons Foundation was created just 3 months ago. The founder and main donor is this man here." On the screen, a photo of a middle-aged man at a charity event. He wore different glasses, was better dressed, and appeared to be a few years younger than the man from the road, but the eyes were unmistakable. "Robert Sanders," read Ms. Linda. "The name sounds familiar. According to Michael, he's the man he helped on the road when he had a flat tire, the one he lent his bicycle to," explained Sarah. "And apparently he's also the owner of one of the largest technology companies in the country." Linda brought her hand to her mouth, surprised. "But why would he do all this? Why didn't he identify himself?" Sarah shrugged. "I'm not sure, but from what I researched, he withdrew from the spotlight a few years ago after losing his wife. He was known for financing social projects, but always discreetly." "And what should we do with this information?" asked Linda, still trying to process everything. "For now, nothing," replied Sarah. "If he chose to remain anonymous, he must have his reasons. I just thought you should know, since your son seems to be at the center of all this." Linda returned home that day with her head buzzing with questions. Why would a millionaire be so interested in the ideas of a 10-year-old boy? What was the real interest behind such generosity? Maternal concern spoke louder, and she decided to observe the situation more closely. Meanwhile, at school, the buzz about the improvements and the new workshops only increased. The news that a sustainability expert would come to give special classes was the preferred topic in the corridors. Mr. Richard, the math teacher, was one of the most skeptical. "Expert? And where did this expert that nobody has ever heard of before come from?" he commented during the break in the teacher's lounge. "Oh, Richard, don't be so suspicious," replied Jennifer. "The foundation must have its contacts. And if it brings benefits to the students, what harm is there?" "The harm is in creating false expectations," retorted Richard. "These NGOs appear, do a lightning project, take some photos for their marketing, and disappear, leaving everyone hanging. Afterward." The conversation was interrupted when the school secretary entered, announcing, "Teachers, Robert Sanders has just arrived for the preparatory meeting. The principal asked you to come to the meeting room." Jennifer and Richard exchanged glances. The moment of truth had arrived. In the meeting room, Robert was sitting next to Lucas, talking in a low voice. When the teachers entered, he stood up to greet them. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a light blue button-up shirt, and an unpretentious blazer. Nothing that would betray his true financial condition. "It's a pleasure to meet you," said Robert, shaking each teacher's hand. "Lucas has spoken very highly of the work you develop here. Are you really a sustainability expert?" asked Richard directly, provoking disapproving looks from his colleagues. Robert smiled, apparently not bothered by the question. "Formally, I'm an environmental engineer with a master's degree in sustainable development, but I would say my greatest experience comes from practice in projects around the world." The answer seemed to calm the skeptical teacher a bit, but Jennifer noticed that there was something more in Robert's eyes, something that seemed like anxiety or expectation. "We're eager to learn about your proposal," she said, trying to soften the atmosphere, "especially because we have a student very interested in this area, Michael Evans." Upon hearing the boy's name, Robert opened a genuine smile. "Ah, yes, Lucas. Mentioned this student. He has a project notebook, right?" "Yes, he's a very creative boy," confirmed Jennifer. "In fact, some of the improvements being implemented seem to have come directly from his ideas." Robert and Lucas exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance. "That's fascinating," commented Robert. "I can hardly wait to meet him." The meeting continued with Robert explaining his methodology for the sustainability workshops. He proposed bi-weekly meetings where students would develop practical projects based on real community problems. He also suggested a science fair at the end of the semester with awards for the best projects. "The prize will be a visit to an environmental research center in Boston with all expenses paid," he announced, to general enthusiasm. When the meeting ended, Jennifer stayed behind, watching Robert put away his materials. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite define. "Have you worked with education before?" she asked, trying to satisfy her curiosity. "Not professionally," he replied, "but I've always believed that education is the best transformation tool we have. And why choose our school? Don't get me wrong, we're very grateful, but Oakville isn't exactly a center of educational innovation." Robert stopped what he was doing and looked directly into the teacher's eyes. "Sometimes, the most unlikely places are precisely where we find the greatest talents, talents that just need an opportunity to flourish." Jennifer nodded, not entirely satisfied with the enigmatic answer, but sensing that she wouldn't get much more at that moment. The next morning, the entire school was excited about the first sustainability workshop. Robert had requested a large space, and the newly renovated court was adapted to receive interested students. To the organizers' surprise, almost all students from 3rd to 5th grade had signed up. Michael arrived early, bringing his project notebook and a backpack full of recyclable materials he had collected on the way. He sat in the front row, next to Jason and Maria, the other members of the Improvement Council. When Robert entered the court, there was a moment of respectful silence. He wore a simple T-shirt with the Foundation's logo, jeans and sneakers. He carried a mysterious box, which he deposited on an improvised table. "Good morning, everyone," he began, smiling at the young audience. "My name is Robert Sanders, and I'm going to share with you some ideas about how we can build a better world, starting with our own community." His eyes scanned the group until they found Michael. The boy felt a shiver as he was recognized. Robert smiled briefly at him before continuing. "But before I start, I want to know who here has already had an idea to improve something at school or in the neighborhood." Several hands were timidly raised, including Michael's. "Great! And how many of you put those ideas on paper? Drew, wrote, made a plan?" Fewer hands remained raised, Michael and a few others. "And how many tried to transform those ideas into reality, even on a small scale?" Only Michael's hand remained raised, along with Maria's, who had started a small recycling project in her classroom. Robert smiled, satisfied. "That's where many of us stop. We have ideas, some even record them, but few have the courage to try to transform them into reality." He opened the mysterious box, revealing miniature wind turbines made with recyclable materials. "Today we're going to take a step beyond ideas. We're going to build something real, something that works." The workshop was an absolute success. In groups, the students built small wind turbines that, connected to LEDs, generated enough light to illuminate a small panel. Michael naturally led his group, making adjustments to the original project that impressed even Robert. At the end of the activity, while the other students were leaving, excitedly commenting on their creations, Robert approached Michael. "I really liked the modifications you made to the project, Michael. You showed an advanced understanding of aerodynamics." The boy smiled, proud. "Thank you, sir. I read about it in a book from the public library." Robert nodded, looking around to make sure they were relatively alone before asking, "And how's your bicycle? Still having brake problems?" Michael's eyes widened. "So it really is you, the man from the road?" Robert smiled, putting his finger to his lips in a request for discretion. "Yes, it's me, but I'd prefer that to stay between us for now, can it?" "Of course," replied Michael, excited by the confirmation. "But why are you doing all this? Because of the flat tire?" Robert laughed softly. "Not exactly because of the tire. It was because of your notebook, Michael, and for your generosity in lending me your bicycle, even without knowing me. You reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What?" "That the best changes begin with simple gestures, and that we don't need much to make a difference in someone's life." Robert paused, looking into the boy's eyes. "Your idea notebook inspired me. I thought, if a 10-year-old boy can imagine such creative solutions, why not help transform them into reality?" Michael felt a wave of pride and emotion that he could barely control. "But you're rich, aren't you? Principal Sarah said the foundation has a lot of money." Robert seemed uncomfortable with the question. "I do have resources, yes, but money without purpose isn't worth much, Michael. It was you who helped me rediscover a purpose." Before the conversation could continue, Ms. Jennifer approached, curious about the prolonged interaction between the two. "Everything okay here?" she asked, looking from one to the other. "Perfectly," replied Robert, resuming a more formal posture. "I was just complimenting the modifications that Michael made to the turbine project. Shows a natural talent for engineering." Jennifer smiled, proud of her student. "Michael has always been special. From the first day in my classroom, I noticed that he sees the world differently." "Certainly," agreed Robert. Then, turning to Michael, "See you at the next workshop. And bring more of those ideas from your notebook." As Robert walked away, Jennifer looked at Michael with curiosity. "You two seem to be having quite an animated conversation." "It's just that Mr. Robert really liked my project," replied the boy, trying not to reveal the secret. Jennifer nodded, not entirely convinced. There was a familiarity in the way the two interacted that didn't match people who had just met. She decided to keep this observation to herself for now. In the following days, the school continued its transformation. The library was reopened with a simple but exciting ceremony. The science laboratory received new equipment, and the community garden began to take shape in the previously abandoned space behind the court. Michael spent more and more time at school, helping with the implementation of his projects, always under the watchful and approving eye of Lucas, who seemed to have established himself permanently at the institution. Robert appeared twice a week, conducting the sustainability workshops that became more popular with each meeting. It was during this period of intense changes that a face long absent reappeared in Michael's life. His father, Tom, who had left Oakville 4 years earlier, promising to return when he made it in the city. He appeared without warning on a Friday, waiting at the school gate when classes ended. "Michael, my son," called Tom, opening his arms for a hug that the boy took a few seconds to return, still processing the surprise. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Here?" asked Michael, his voice a mix of confusion and contained joy. "I came to see you, of course. Can't I visit my own son anymore?" Tom smiled, messing up the boy's hair. "Wow, how you've grown! You're almost a man already." Michael smiled, shyly. It was strange to see his father after so long, to recognize in that more aged face the figure that appeared in his increasingly spaced memories. "Does Mom know you came?" he asked, already imagining Ms. Linda's reaction. "Not yet." "I thought I'd surprise both of you." Tom looked around, noticing the ongoing construction at the school. "What's happening here? Everything under renovation?" "It's a new project," explained Michael, a gleam of enthusiasm appearing in his eyes despite the unexpected situation. A foundation chose our school for improvements. They're building a laboratory, new library, even a community garden. Foundation, is it? Tom frowned, interested. There must be a lot of money involved in this, huh? Before Michael could answer, Robert and Lucas exited the main building, talking animatedly. Tom's gaze immediately fixed on the two, especially on Robert, whose bearing and manner of speaking indicated a person of means. "Who are they?" he asked, pointing discreetly. "The younger one is Lucas. He represents the foundation. The other is Robert. He gives sustainability workshops for us." Michael hesitated, unsure if he should share what he knew about Robert. "And you participate in these workshops?" "Yes, it's really cool. We're doing a rainwater collection project now." Tom nodded, his interest clearly piqued. "Do you get along with them? Do they like you?" Michael shrugged. "I think so. Mr. Robert praised my notebook projects quite a bit." "Projects? What projects?" Tom's curiosity seemed to grow with each of his son's answers. "I have a notebook where I draw ideas to improve things. The school garden, for example, was my idea." Tom's face lit up with something that Michael couldn't exactly identify. Pride, surprise, or perhaps a kind of internal calculation. "My son is an inventor, is he? I always knew you were smart." At that moment, Robert noticed their presence and waved discreetly to Michael, who returned the gesture, embarrassed under his father's watchful eye. "Are you friends?" asked Tom, noticing the interaction. "He's my teacher in the workshop," replied Michael, avoiding mentioning the road episode. Murmured Tom. "I think I should meet this Robert. After all, he's teaching my son, isn't he?" Michael felt a knot in his stomach. There was something in the way his father spoke that made him uncomfortable. "Better not bother him now, Dad. He seems busy." "Another time, then," conceded Tom, but his eyes remained fixed on Robert for a few moments. "Let's go home now. Your mother must be anxious to see me." Michael doubted that very much, but said nothing. He mounted his bicycle and pedaled alongside. His father, who walked with his hands in his pockets asking questions about the school, about the workshops, and especially about the foundation and its representatives. When they arrived home, Miss Linda's reaction was exactly as Michael had predicted, a mixture of shock, distrust, and a cold politeness that barely disguised years of hurt. "Tom," she said simply, standing at the door, without opening space for him to immediately enter. "What are you doing here after so long?" "I came to see my son Linda, and you too, of course." He smiled in that way that Michael remembered, the smile that his mother used to say, "Could sell ice to Eskimos." 4 years, Tom. 4 years without a visit. Just phone calls months apart, and some money transfers when you remembered. No, I know. It wasn't easy in the city, but things are getting better now, and I wanted to see how you were doing." He looked around as if assessing the simple house. "Michael told me about the news at school. A foundation, is it?" Something in the tone of the question made Linda harden her expression even more. "Yes, they're making improvements. Michael is even participating in the council that supervises the work." "My son is important, then." Tom smiled, patting Michael's shoulder with exaggerated pride. "I always knew he had a future." Miss Linda gave a tired sigh and finally opened the way. "Come in, let's go. We don't need to be talking at the door for everyone to see." Inside the house, the conversation continued tensely. Tom talked about his jobs in the city, the difficulties, the plans that never worked out, and how he was now about to achieve something big. He asked many questions about the foundation, about Robert and Lucas, and especially about Michael's involvement in the projects. "Don't you find it strange," he asked, while eating the dinner that Linda had prepared reluctantly. "A foundation, appearing out of nowhere in a small town like this, investing so much money." "Of course I do," replied Linda, "but Principal Sarah verified everything. It's legitimate from what it seems." "And this Robert Sanders, who is he?" Linda and Michael exchanged a quick glance. "A sustainability expert who gives workshops to the students," she replied, omitting what she knew about the man's true identity. Tom chewed slowly, thoughtful. "Interesting, very interesting." Then, turning to Michael, "And he likes your ideas, son? This project notebook of yours?" "Yes, he does," replied Michael, uncomfortable with the interrogation. "Can I see this famous Notebook? Michael hesitated, looking to his mother for guidance. Ms. Linda gave a slight nod as if to say, "Go ahead, there's no reason to hide." The boy went to his room and returned with the current notebook, reluctant to hand it to his father. He had always felt that those pages contained an intimate part of himself, his dreams and hopes drawn in the form of projects. Tom flipped through the notebook with growing interest, occasionally making sounds of approval. "This is really impressive, Michael. You have talent, my son. These ideas, it could be worth a lot of money in the right hands." The comment made Michael frown. He had never thought of his projects as something that could be worth money. They were just dreams of a better world, drawings that expressed how he wished things could be. "Ms." Linda intervened, recovering the notebook from Tom's hands and returning it to Michael. "It's already late. Michael needs to sleep. He has school tomorrow." Of course, agreed Tom, but his eyes remained fixed on the notebook. "We'll talk more tomorrow. I'm thinking about staying in town for a while, to make up for lost time with my son." Michael went to bed that night with conflicting feelings. On one hand, there was the natural joy of seeing his father after so long. On the other, an uneasiness he couldn't exactly name, as if something were out of place in the natural order of things. The next day, Saturday, Tom insisted on taking Michael for a walk around town. "I want you to show me everything that's changed around here," he said, with an enthusiasm that sounded slightly forced to Miss Linda's attentive ears. "Will you be back in time for lunch?" she asked, concerned. "Of course, woman. I just want to spend some time with my son. Is that asking too much?" Michael got his bicycle and the two left. Tom walked beside his son, who pedaled slowly to match his father's pace. They passed the central square, the small local shops, and inevitably ended up in front of the school. "Let's take a closer look at the construction," suggested Tom, pointing to the half-open gate where some workers were moving materials even on a weekend. "I don't know if we can just enter like that, Dad. Only council members have authorization on weekends." "But you are on the council, aren't you?" Tom smiled, giving a complicit wink. "Come on, just a quick peek. I want to see this project that has my son so excited." Reluctantly, Michael led his father through the side gate. The courtyard was partially occupied with construction materials, and some workers were working on the new structure of the community garden. "Is this the garden you designed?" asked Tom, genuinely impressed with the developing structure. "Yes," replied Michael, an involuntary smile of pride appearing on his face. "The main beds will be there, and that part will be a composting system for natural fertilizer." "Fascinating," murmured Tom, looking around as if assessing the value of everything. "And how much do you think they're spending on all this? A fortune, I imagine." Before Michael could answer, a familiar voice sounded behind them. "Michael Evans? What are you doing here on Saturday?" It was Robert, carrying some folders and apparently surprised to find them there. His eyes narrowed slightly upon noticing Tom. "Sorry, Mr. Robert," Michael hurried to say. "I was just showing the garden to my dad." "Your dad?" Robert extended his hand politely. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Tom Evans," he introduced himself, shaking Robert's hand with exaggerated enthusiasm. "The pleasure is all mine. I've heard a lot about you and your work here at the school. Michael can't stop talking about your workshops." Robert smiled, but his eyes remained cautious. "Michael is a brilliant student. He has ideas that surprise even specialists like me." Yes, I saw his notebook. Impressive, isn't it? I always knew my son had a special gift." Robert gave Michael a quick glance as if trying to assess the situation. The boy seemed uncomfortable with his father's exaggerated praise. "Indeed, Michael has a natural talent," agreed Robert, his voice more restrained. "We're just helping to develop what was already there." "And this foundation," continued Tom, taking a step forward, subtly invading Robert's personal space. "New horizons, right? How does it work exactly? Do you invest in other schools as well?" Robert discreetly backed away, maintaining his composure. "Yes, we have projects in various communities, Mr. Evans. Oakville is just one of them." "And how do you choose where to invest? There must be a lot of demand, I imagine." "There are several factors," replied Robert vaguely. "Impact potential, community need, local engagement." I see, Tom smiled, putting his arm around Michael's shoulders. And my son here, with his ideas, helped bring you here, didn't he? A tense silence settled in. Robert looked directly at Michael, an unformulated question in his eyes. Actually, Dad, intervened Michael, feeling the need to clarify something. The foundation chose the school even before knowing about my notebook. It wasn't because of me. Tom seemed slightly upset by the correction, but recovered quickly. Of course, but I bet that after seeing his ideas you became even more convinced that you made the right choice, didn't you, Mr. Sanders? Robert smiled diplomatically. Certainly Michael's talent is a bonus we found here. Then, checking his watch, "Excuse me, but I have a meeting now. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Evans." "The pleasure was mine," insisted Tom, shaking Robert's hand again. "I hope we can talk more. I'm thinking of staying in town for a while, you know. Making up for lost time with my son." "Of course," replied Robert, already walking away. "Michael, don't forget the council meeting on Monday. We have important news." "I won't forget," assured the boy, watching Robert walk away with a strange feeling in his chest, as if something important had just happened, though he didn't know exactly what. "Interesting man, this Robert," commented Tom when they were back on the street. "Very reserved, isn't he?" Michael shrugged, uncomfortable. "He's just a teacher, Dad." "Teacher," Tom laughed, a sound that contained a note of cynicism that bothered Michael. "That man is much more than a simple teacher, son. The way he talks, the discreet but expensive clothes, the way he carries himself. He has money, and a lot of it." "How do you know?" "Your father knows people, Michael. I spent 4 years in the city, learned to identify types." Tom placed his hand on his son's shoulder, drawing closer as if to tell a secret. "This Robert Sanders is not a simple foundation volunteer. He's the owner of the money, or at least part of it. I bet on it." Michael felt his stomach sink. His father had perceived what he himself had suspected for weeks, what Principal Sarah had already confirmed to his mother. Robert's secret was in danger. "I don't think so, Dad. The foundation owner is someone else, Mr. Lucas mentioned once." Tom raised his eyebrows, skeptical. "You believe that? Rich people like to hide their game, son. They appear as experts and volunteers, when in reality they're the bosses pretending to be employees. Why would someone do that?" asked Michael, genuinely confused. "To avoid creating a commotion, to observe without being noticed, to see who really deserves their money." Tom gave a conspiratorial wink. "It's a test, Michael. They're testing. All of you?" The boy remained silent, unsure how to respond. Part of him wanted to defend Robert, explain that the man wasn't testing anyone, just helping because he cared. But another part feared that, by defending Robert, he would end up confirming his father's suspicions. "Let's go back home," he said finally. "Mom must be waiting for lunch." For the rest of the day, Tom continued asking questions about Robert, Lucas, and the foundation. On Sunday, to Michael's dismay, he announced that he would go with him to school on Monday, to follow this incredible project more closely. "You don't need to, Dad," insisted Michael. "It's just a council meeting. It'll be boring." "Boring? A meeting where they decide how to spend millions on improvements? I highly doubt it." Tom laughed, running his hand through his son's hair. "Besides, I want to see you in action, defending your ideas." Michael cast a desperate look at his mother, who noticed her son's discomfort. "Tom," she intervened, "these meetings are only for council members. I don't think they'll allow you to enter." "Oh, I'm the father of one of the council members. Of course they'll allow it." He smiled, confident. "And if they don't allow it, I'll wait outside. I just want to see my son coming out of the meeting, know how it went." Ms. Linda and Michael exchanged worried glances, but neither could think of a convincing argument to dissuade Tom. On Monday morning, as promised, Tom accompanied Michael to school. The boy pedaled his bicycle slowly, while his father walked beside him, notably animated. "Who else will be at this meeting?" asked Tom, for the 3rd time since they had left home. "I already told you, Dad. Principal Sarah, the council teachers, Mr. Lucas, maybe Mr. Robert and the other student representatives, Maria and Jason." "And what will you discuss today?" Michael sighed. "The next phase of the work, I think, and the projects for the science fair." When they arrived at the school gate, Lucas was there talking with Principal Sarah. Both seemed surprised to see Michael accompanied. "Good morning, Michael," greeted Sarah. And you must be Tom Evans, Michael's father, he promptly introduced, himself extending his hand. I came to accompany my son today. I hope you don't mind. Actually, Mr. Evans, the council meetings are restricted to members, explained Sarah politely. School policy, you understand. Ah, of course, of course. Tom backed down, smiling. I don't want to interfere. I just came to bring Michael and thought I might watch. But if it's not possible, no problem. I'll wait out here. Lucas, who had been observing the interaction attentively, approached. You're welcome to visit the school facilities while you... Wait, if you'd like. I can ask someone to accompany you. That would be great, replied Tom, enthusiastic. I'd very much like to see up close this entire project that has my son as an important participant. Michael entered the meeting with a knot in his stomach. Something in his father's sudden interest, in his insistence on meeting Robert and Lucas, in knowing details about the foundation, left him deeply uncomfortable. The council meeting began punctually at 9 a.m., with Robert present as Michael feared. They discussed the progress of the work, the schedule for the coming weeks, and especially the official inauguration event for the new facilities, scheduled for the end of the month. We thought about inviting local authorities, the regional press, and, of course, all parents and guardians, explained Lucas, consulting his notes. It will be an opportunity to present the projects developed in the workshops and give visibility to the Foundation's work. And what about the sustainability project? Asked Robert, looking at Michael. How are the preparations for the science fair coming along? The boy, distracted by concerns about his father, took a moment to realize that the question was directed at him. Oh, sorry. We're advancing well. We made a prototype of the water filtration system that works. Excellent, smiled Robert. And do you have all the necessary materials to finish the project? Michael hesitated. Almost all of them. We still need some special connections for the pipes, but we couldn't find them here in town. Make a list of what's missing, suggested Robert. I can provide these materials for the next workshop. As the meeting progressed, Michael noticed that Robert occasionally seemed distracted, looking at the window of the room from where it was possible to see the school courtyard. Following his gaze, the boy saw the reason for the concern. His father was out there, talking animatedly with one of the construction workers, gesturing and pointing to different areas of the construction. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When the meeting ended, Michael left quickly, hoping to find his father before he approached Robert again. But it was too late. Tom was already standing at the door of the meeting room, as if waiting precisely for that moment. Son, he exclaimed, hugging Michael effusively. How was the meeting? Lots of news. Then, without waiting for an answer, he turned to Robert, who was leaving at that exact moment. Mr. Sanders, good to see you again. Robert forced a polite smile. Mr. Evans, did you come to pick up your son? I came to accompany him, actually. I'm fascinated by this whole project. I spent the morning touring the facilities. Impressive what you're doing here. Thank you, replied Robert dryly. It was a joint effort of the foundation with the school community. Modest, commented Tom, smiling. Very modest of you. But we know that projects of this size only happen when there's someone with vision and resources to back them. An uncomfortable silence set in. Michael looked nervously from Robert to his father, feeling the growing discomfort in the interaction. Dad, he finally intervened, we need to go. I promised to help the garden team today. Of course, agreed Tom, without taking his eyes off Robert. But first, I'd like to extend an invitation to Mr. Sanders. How about having dinner with us tonight? I'd very much like to talk more about this project, understand better how I can help my son take advantage of this opportunity. Robert seemed momentarily speechless, clearly caught off guard by the direct invitation. His eyes met Michael's, who tried, with his gaze, to convey a silent apology. It's very kind of you, Mr. Evans, but unfortunately I have commitments tonight. I need to return to Boston for a meeting early tomorrow. What a shame, lamented Tom, without seeming really disappointed. It'll have to wait for your next visit, then. I'll be in town for an indefinite period, you know. We've decided to reconnect as a family. Robert nodded politely. Of course. Now, if you'll excuse me. As Robert walked away down the corridor, Michael felt his face burning with shame. There was something predatory in the way his father observed the specialist, as if Robert were some kind of prize to be won. "Did you see how he evaded, son?" murmured Tom when they were alone. "That confirms what I said. He's not a simple volunteer teacher. There's something bigger there." "Dad, please," begged Michael. "Stop this. Mr. Robert just wants to help the school." "Help, of course," Tom laughed, a sound without humor. "Nobody spends millions on a small-town school just to help, Michael. There's always a greater interest." "What would his interest be, then?" challenged Michael, his irritation beginning to overcome his embarrassment. Tom shrugged. "I don't know yet. Maybe money laundering. Maybe marketing for his company. Maybe he's interested in talents like you, son." "What do you mean?" "Your idea notebook. I saw how he looks at you with genuine admiration. Maybe he's looking for brilliant minds for his company, investing early in future talents." Tom smiled, as if that idea particularly pleased him. "And if that's the case, we need to ensure that you're properly valued, understand?" Michael felt a chill. "No, I don't understand. Intellectual property, son. Your ideas have value. If this man is interested in them, we need to ensure that you're recognized and compensated appropriately." The boy shook his head, horrified by the direction the conversation was taking. "It's nothing like that, Dad. I just want to help improve things. I don't want money for it." "Ah, Michael," sighed Tom, putting his arm around his son's shoulders. "You're too young to understand how the world works. Let your father take care of this for you." During the following days, Tom's constant presence at the school began to attract attention. He appeared during workshop hours, tried to participate in council activities, and always sought opportunities to talk with Robert and Lucas. The situation reached a point of tension when Principal Sarah finally called him for a private conversation. "Mr. Evans," she began, carefully choosing her words, "I understand your enthusiasm for the project and for Michael's involvement, but your constant presence is beginning to interfere with the school routine." "Interfere?" Tom pretended to be offended. "I'm just participating in my son's school life as any responsible father should do. And we value parents' interest," continued Sarah, maintaining her firmness. "But there are limits that need to be respected. The workshops and council meetings are structured activities with defined participants." Tom narrowed his eyes, losing part of the mask of cordiality. "I'm beginning to think that there's something you want to hide, Principal. Why so much resistance to a father's presence?" "There's nothing being hidden, Mr. Evans. Just rules and protocols that apply to everyone." The conversation ended without a satisfactory resolution, with Tom promising to respect the spaces, but making clear his dissatisfaction. As he left the principal's office, he found Robert in the corridor, apparently waiting to speak with Sarah. "Mr. Sanders," greeted Tom with a tense smile. "It seems that some don't appreciate a father's interest in his son's future." Robert maintained a neutral expression. "I believe Principal Sarah is just looking after the proper functioning of the school, Mr. Evans." Of course," agreed Tom without sincerity. Then, taking a step forward, he lowered his voice. "You know, Mr. Sanders, I'm not naive. I know how to recognize when there's more happening than it appears." "I don't understand what you mean," replied Robert cautiously. "This foundation, these generous donations, your particular interest in my son's ideas. There's a pattern. There." Tom leaned in even closer, invading Robert's personal space. "I just want to ensure that Michael's interests are protected, you understand? That he receives due recognition and compensation for his contributions." Robert, visibly, hardened. "Michael's ideas are his own. The foundation merely provides the resources for him and other students to develop them. There's no type of appropriation happening here." "Yet," added Tom with a cold smile. "But we both know how the corporate world works, don't we? Today, they're school project ideas. Tomorrow they could be valuable patents." "Mr. Evans," Robert took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure, "I think there's a misunderstanding about the nature of the Foundation's work. Our objective is purely educational. There are no ulterior motives." "If you say so," Tom shrugged, moving away. "In any case, Michael and I had a long conversation about intellectual property. He's beginning to understand the value of what he creates. Robert watched Tom walk away, an expression of deep concern on his face. As soon as Michael's father disappeared down the corridor, he quickly entered the principal's office. "We need to talk about Tom Evans," he said without preamble. "I fear he's disturbing the balance we've managed to create here." Sarah sighed, tired. "I just had a difficult conversation with him. He's questioning everything, suggesting that we're hiding something, and clearly interested in any possible financial benefit he can extract from the situation." "That's what worries me," agreed Robert. "He seems to be putting ideas in Michael's head about intellectual property and financial compensation, completely contrary to the cooperative spirit we were cultivating. What do you suggest we do? We can't simply forbid him from seeing his son." Robert ran his hand through his hair, visibly disturbed. "I don't know, but I fear that his presence could compromise the entire project, and worse, harm Michael himself." Meanwhile, at Ms. Linda's house, a heated discussion was unfolding. "You're using our son Tom," she accused, after Michael had been sent to his room. "You show up after 4 years without making an appearance, and suddenly you're all interested in the school, in the opportunities that are arising." "I'm protecting his interests," Tom defended himself. "Don't you see what's happening? Robert Sanders is not a simple volunteer. There's something bigger at play, and Michael's ideas are at the center of it all." "Michael's ideas are projects of a 10-year-old child, Tom. He draws dreams, not industrial patents." "You're so naive." Tom shook his head, exasperated. "Why do you think a man like Robert Sanders would be personally involved in a little school in a small town if there wasn't a significant potential return?" "Maybe because he cares, because he wants to make a difference," suggested Linda sarcastically. "Concepts that you obviously don't understand." "I don't care." Tom became irritated. "I'm here, aren't I? Trying to ensure that our son isn't exploited." "No, Tom. You're trying to ensure that, if there's something to gain, you'll be around to grab your share." Linda crossed her arms, resolute. "I've known you for too long to fall for that talk. You never cared about what Michael writes in those notebooks. You didn't even know they existed until you discovered that someone important was interested." Tom opened his mouth to retort, but was interrupted by the sound of something falling in Michael's room. The two looked at each other for a second, before Linda ran to check on her son. Michael was sitting on the bed, his face red and wet with tears. On the floor, a broken picture frame, the only photo he had with his father, taken when he was just 5 years old. "You're fighting because of me," he stated, his voice choked. "No, my son," Linda hurried to say, sitting next to him. "We're just discussing what's best for you." "Exactly," agreed Tom, standing at the door. "Your father just wants to ensure that nobody takes advantage of your talent, Michael." The boy looked from one to the other, his young face marked by a sadness that seemed to age him instantly. "Nobody is taking advantage of me. Mr. Robert just wants to help. He likes my ideas because he believes they can do good, not because they're worth money." "Michael," Tom began, his tone condescending. "No," interrupted the boy with surprising firmness. "You weren't even here when I started drawing my projects. Mom knows, Ms. Jennifer knows. They were just to make me happy, to imagine a better world. I don't want them to become a business." Linda put her arm around her son's shoulders, pulling him close. "It's okay, Michael. Nobody is going to transform your ideas into something you don't want." Tom observed the scene with a calculating expression, as if reassessing his strategy. "Son, I understand how you're feeling, but you're too young to understand how the world works. There are people who approach with good intentions, but in the end, they're just seeking their own benefit." "Like you," shot Michael, his eyes burning. "You only showed up after the school started changing. You never cared about my notebooks before." The direct accusation seemed to hit Tom like a physical blow. His expression hardened for an instant before forcibly softening. "That's not fair, Michael. I've always cared about you. I was just busy trying to build a better future for us." "For us or for you?" questioned Michael, with a perception that surprised even Linda. A heavy silence filled the room. Tom opened and closed his mouth several times, as if searching for the right words, but finally left without saying anything, slamming the front door as he left. "Will he come back?" asked Michael after a few minutes of silence. Linda sighed, hugging her son tighter. I don't know, my son. With your father, you never know. The next morning at school, Michael was visibly dejected. During the sustainability workshop, he remained quiet, working mechanically on the project, without his usual enthusiasm. Robert noticed the change and, at the end of the activity, discreetly approached. Is everything okay, Michael? He asked, genuinely concerned. The boy shrugged, avoiding looking directly at the man. More or less. Do you want to talk about it? Michael hesitated, considering the offer. Part of him wanted to vent. Tell about the argument with his father, about the insinuations of exploitation, about the fear that his innocent ideas were somehow at the center of a dispute between adults. But another part feared that anything he said would only further complicate the situation. My dad thinks you want to steal my ideas, he finally said in a low voice. He says he has to protect me. Robert closed his eyes for a moment, as if the accusation had deeply hurt him. When he reopened them, there was evident sadness in them. Michael, I promise, by the memory of my wife, that I never had any intention of stealing your ideas. On the contrary, I want you to develop them, to learn how to transform them into reality, to inspire others with them. I know, murmured Michael. I try to explain that to him, but he doesn't believe it. Robert seemed to carefully consider. His next words, Your father is concerned about you in his own way. Maybe I need to talk to him, clarify some points. No, exclaimed Michael, alarmed. That will only make things worse. He's already telling everyone that you're a disguised businessman or something like that. Robert's expression changed subtly, a mixture of surprise and resignation. He discovered who I am? Michael slowly nodded. Principal Sarah researched the foundation. She told my mum, and I think my mum told him during the argument. I see, Robert sighed deeply. That complicates things. Are you going to leave now? Asked Michael, a sudden fear tightening his chest. Are you going to abandon the project? No, Michael. I'm not abandoning anything, assured Robert firmly. But perhaps it's time to be more transparent about some things. Before they could continue the conversation, Miss Jennifer approached, a concerned look on her face. Michael, your father is at the school gate. He seems quite agitated. The boy's heart sank. He shouldn't be here today. Do you want me to go with you? Offered Jennifer. No, I'll go, intervened Robert, surprising both of them. I think it's time we had a frank conversation, man to man. Mr. Robert, I'm not sure that's a good idea, hesitated Jennifer. Michael's father has been quite confrontational lately. Precisely why, replied Robert with calm determination. Michael, can you stay here with Miss Jennifer? I promise I'll try to resolve this in the best way possible. The boy nodded, timidly, watching with apprehension as Robert walked away toward the school gate. At the gate, Tom Evans was waiting with an expression that mixed impatience and irritation. Upon seeing Robert approaching instead of his son, his posture visibly changed, shoulders back, chin raised, like an animal preparing to defend its territory. Mr. Evans, greeted Robert politely. Can I help you? Where's my son? Asked Tom directly. I came to pick him up early today. Michael is finishing an important activity, replied Robert, maintaining his calm. I believe it would be better for him to complete it before leaving. It's just 20 more minutes. I didn't ask for your opinion on what's best for my son, retorted Tom, his tone rising slightly. I want to see him now. Robert inhaled deeply, as if gathering patience. Mr. Evans, I think we need to talk. There have been some misunderstandings that are complicating the situation for everyone, especially Michael. Misunderstandings? Tom laughed, a sound without humor. Like the fact that you pretend to be a simple volunteer when you're actually the owner of one of the largest technology companies in the country. That kind of misunderstanding? Robert showed no surprise at the direct accusation. I never lied. About who I am, Mr. Evans. I just don't announce my position because it usually changes how people relate to me, exactly as is happening now. Oh, forgive me for not treating the great Robert Sanders with proper reverence, mocked Tom sarcastically. But it happens that we're talking about my son's future, and I have the right to know what your real intentions are with him. My Intentions? Robert frowned, genuinely confused. I'm simply offering Michael and all the other students opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. There's no hidden agenda. And what about his ideas? Those projects in the notebook? Are you going to tell me you didn't see commercial potential in them? Robert seemed momentarily speechless, as if the suggestion were so absurd that he didn't know how to respond. Mr. Evans, Michael is 10 years old. His projects are impressive for his age, but they're developing ideas, educational concepts. I'm not here to exploit children's intellectual property. Then why so much interest specifically in him? Insisted Tom. Why highlight him for the council, for the special workshops? And don't come to me with this story that it was a coincidence, that you didn't know who he was when your foundation chose this school. A long silence established itself between the two men. Robert seemed to be waging an internal battle, carefully considering what to say next. It wasn't a coincidence, he finally admitted. I met Michael on the road a few months ago. I had a flat tire, no cell signal. He offered his bicycle so I could seek help in town. The flat tire story. Tom seemed skeptical. Michael mentioned that, but I thought it was just a story you made up to get close to him. It's the truth. Michael showed me his idea notebook that day. I was impressed, not with the commercial potential, but with the purity of his intentions, with his vision of a better world. Robert paused, his gaze distant. He reminded me of myself when I was young, before the corporate world transformed me into something that my wife wouldn't recognize anymore. Something in Robert's raw sincerity seemed to momentarily shake Tom's defensive posture. I lost my wife 3 years ago, continued Robert, his voice lower now. Cancer. Before she departed, she made me promise that I would use our fortune to make a real difference in people's lives, not just to accumulate more zeros in bank accounts. I spent the following 2 years shut in my office, unable to fulfill that promise, until that day on the road with Michael. Tom observed in silence, his expression undecipherable. Your son, Mr. Evans, without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return, showed me a path back to the purpose I had lost. Robert looked directly into Tom's eyes. I'm not here to steal his ideas or to transform him into some kind of corporate prodigy. I'm here because I want him, and all the other children, to have the opportunities they deserve to develop their full potential, whatever it may be. A heavy silence established itself between the two men. For a moment it seemed that something had changed in Tom's hard countenance, as if Robert's words had found some breach in his armor of distrust. But then the moment passed, and the calculating expression returned. A moving story, Mr. Sanders. Really, you almost convinced me. But in the real world, people like you don't spend millions without expecting a return. Robert shook his head, a deep sadness in his gaze. There are different types of return, Mr. Evans. Not all are measured in money. Philosophy from someone who already has money to spare, retorted Tom. In any case, I came to get my son, and I won't leave here without him. At that moment, Jennifer appeared with Michael, who looked apprehensively from his father to Robert. Michael, called Tom, extending his hand. Let's go home. The boy hesitated, looking at Robert as if asking for guidance. It's all right. Michael, assured Robert with a gentle smile. We'll talk another day about the project. Michael nodded sadly and approached his father, who immediately placed his hand on his shoulder in a gesture that seemed both protective and possessive. Tajiba. Oh, and Mr. Sanders, said Tom, already turning to leave. Consider this Michael's last participation in your workshops. From now on, he'll focus on regular school activities. But, Dad, protested Michael, horrified, the sustainability project is for the science fair. We're almost finished. There will be other fairs, son, other opportunities without complications. As Tom led Michael out of the school, the boy looked back one last time, his eyes meeting Robert's. There was a silent plea there, a supplication, that the older man perfectly understood, but for which at that moment he had no solution. That afternoon, while Tom went out to resolve some matters in town, leaving Michael at home with his mother, the boy finally broke down. With tears in his eyes, he told Miss Linda everything that had happened, his father's prohibition, the conversation with Robert, the unfinished project for the science fair. He's ruining everything, Mum, sobbed Michael. "Now Mr. Robert will think I don't want to participate anymore, that I don't care about the project." Ms. Linda hugged her son, feeling her own heart breaking over the situation. "Your father thinks he's protecting you, Michael. In his way, wrong, but still, he's not protecting me. He's stopping me from doing what I love just because... Michael couldn't finish the sentence, choked by frustration. "Because he's afraid," completed Linda softly. "Afraid that someone like Mr. Robert might offer you opportunities that he never managed to give you. Afraid that you'll grow up and realize there's a much bigger world out there than he ever dreamed of." Michael looked at his mother, surprised by her insight. "Do you really think so?" "Your father always had big dreams, but little persistence to achieve them," she explained with a tired sigh. "Seeing you so young already having your ideas valued by someone important, that affects him in a way that not even he understands properly. But it's not fair that he ruins everything." "No, it's not fair," agreed Linda. Then, after a moment of reflection, "And we won't let that happen." "What do you mean?" Linda smiled, a determined gleam in her eyes that Michael rarely saw. "Your father isn't the only one who can make decisions in this family. If the project is important to you, then you'll finish it. But he forbade... He's not here all the time, is he?" Linda gave a complicit wink. "And when is the science fair?" "In 2 weeks," replied Michael. "But there's still a lot to do on the project, and he won't let me go to school outside of class hours." "Leave that to me," assured Linda, with a determination that surprised her son. "Tomorrow, I'll talk to Principal Sarah and Mr. Robert. We'll find a solution." The next morning, as promised, Ms. Linda went to the school right after Tom left to resolve his business in town. She met with Principal Sarah, who immediately summoned Robert to the meeting. "Michael is devastated by the prohibition," explained Linda. "The science fair project means a lot to him." "I understand your concern, Miss Evans," replied Robert, visibly downcast. "But I don't want to create more conflicts in your family. Perhaps it's better to respect Michael's father's decision for now." "With all due respect, Mr. Sanders, Tom doesn't have exclusive authority over the educational decisions of my son," retorted Linda, with a firmness that surprised everyone in the room. "I've been here for the past 4 years, supporting Michael every step of the way, and I'm the one who says my son will participate in this project until the end." Principal Sarah and Robert exchanged surprised looks at the usually discreet woman's determination. "The problem is practical," pondered Sarah. "If Tom doesn't allow Michael to participate in the workshops, how can we work around this without creating an even more difficult situation?" Linda already had a solution in mind. "What if the workshops were somewhere else, at the public library perhaps? Tom never goes there. Michael could say he's studying for tests, which isn't untrue." Robert considered the proposal for a moment. "It could work. I could organize a smaller group at the library, focused only on finalizing the projects for the fair. Lucas could help coordinate." "Excellent," smiled Linda, satisfied. "Michael will be so happy when he finds out." "Just one more thing," added Robert, hesitant, "about my identity. I think it's time to be more transparent with everyone." "Are you thinking of revealing who you are?" asked Sarah, concerned. "That could bring complications, especially with the media." "Not immediately to everyone, but at least to the council members and teachers closest to the project," explained Robert. "Trying to maintain anonymity is creating more problems than solutions. Perhaps by being open about my intentions, I can dispel some of the suspicions." "Including Tom's?" asked Linda, skeptical. Robert gave a sad smile. "That I can't guarantee. Some people see ulterior motives even in the most sincere gestures, but at least I won't be feeding the mystery." The new strategy was put into practice immediately. Michael, radiant with the possibility of continuing his project, began frequenting the public library 3 times a week, where he met Robert, Lucas, and the other students interested in completing their projects for the science fair. The plan worked perfectly for a week. Tom, busy with his own mysterious affairs in town, didn't even question his son's sudden dedication to studies. Michael was advancing rapidly on the rainwater collection and filtration project, now with even more sophisticated components that Robert had provided. However, like many secrets in small towns, this one also had an expiration date. It was on a Thursday afternoon, when Michael was absorbed in final adjustments to the filtration system, that the library door opened violently. "So this is where you've been!" thundered Tom, advancing between the tables of the almost empty library. "Lying!" "To your own father." Michael froze, looking with horror at his furious father. Robert, who was beside the boy, rose slowly, his posture erect but not threatening. "Mr. Evans," he began with controlled voice, "there's no need to make a scene. We're in a library." "A scene," repeated Tom, laughing without humor. "Is that what you call it when a father discovers he's being deceived by everyone? By his own son, by his ex-wife, and by a millionaire pretending to be a teacher?" The elderly librarian timidly approached. "Gentlemen, please, we need to keep voices down." "I'm sorry," replied Robert politely, before turning his attention back to Tom. "Can we talk outside, like civilized adults?" "I have nothing to talk about with you," retorted Tom, grabbing Michael's arm. "Come on, son, the game is over." Michael resisted, pulling his arm back. "No, Dad, the project is almost ready. The fair is next week." "I don't care. You lied to me, Michael." The disappointment in Tom's voice seemed genuine, mixed with anger. "I thought I could trust you at least." "And you can," intervened Robert. "Michael is only here because he loves this project. It has nothing to do with lying or deceiving. He just wanted to complete something important to him." "Important?" Tom turned his fury toward Robert. "Or important to you and your plans? What do you gain by seducing children with your ideas of grandeur, Sanders?" The accusation hung in the air like something toxic. Michael looked horrified at his father, while Robert visibly paled. "Dad!" exclaimed Michael, shocked. "It's nothing. Like that. Mr. Robert never—" "Silence, Michael," cut Tom. "You're just a child. You don't understand how these rich people manipulate others." Robert took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. "Mr. Evans, your accusations are serious and completely unfounded. I'm here only as an educator, helping your son and other students with a legitimate scientific project." "Educator?" mocked Tom. "You're the owner of a billion-dollar technology company. Do you think I didn't research you? Robert Sanders, the reclusive philanthropist who suddenly decides to take an interest in a little school in a small town. Why? Because of a boy with brilliant ideas." He made air quotes when pronouncing the last word. "Yes," replied Robert simply. "Exactly. Because of that." The direct response seemed to momentarily destabilize Tom. He expected denials, excuses, maybe even threats, not such a simple confirmation. "What?" "You're right. I became interested in the school because of your son, because I saw in him something I had lost in myself. Purpose." Robert took a step forward, maintaining a calm tone. "But there's no secret agenda, no exploitation plan. I just want to give Michael, and other children like him, opportunities that I myself didn't have until very late in life." Tom narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "And you expect me to believe that a billionaire is spending millions for altruism?" "For redemption, perhaps," corrected Robert with a sad smile. "For a promise made to someone I loved. Why don't you ask your son what he thinks about all this? Instead of presuming you know what's best for him without even listening to him." Tom's gaze turned to Michael, who remained there, small but determined beside his almost completed project. There was something in the boy's look, a mixture of fear, disappointment, and a surprising resolution for someone so young. "Michael," said Tom, trying to soften his voice, "you really don't see what's happening here. This man may have other interests." "His only interest is helping me, Dad," replied Michael firmly. "He's never asked for anything in return. He's never talked about money, patents, none of that. It was you who started with this story. Because I know the world, son. I know how it works." "Perhaps," intervened Robert softly, "the world isn't as dark as you think, Mr. Evans. Sometimes, people simply want to do good without ulterior motives." Tom seemed momentarily speechless, looking from Robert to Michael, and then to the project on the table. A complex structure for a 10-year-old child, but impressively functional, with small tubes, filters, and a collection system connected to a mini reservoir. "What is this anyway?" he asked, his voice now lower, almost reluctantly curious. Michael, perceiving a breach in his father's armor of distrust, perked up. "It's a rainwater collection and filtration system, Dad. Look, the water is collected here," he pointed to. "The top of the structure passes through these natural filters that remove impurities, and then is stored in this tank. It can be used to water plants, wash sidewalks, even to flush toilets. It saves a lot of treated water." There was so much pride, so much passion in the boy's explanation that even Tom, with all his suspicion, seemed momentarily touched. "You made this by yourself?" "Not completely," admitted Michael honestly. "The workshop team helped with some technical parts. Jason did the capacity calculations with me, and Mr. Robert got the materials we couldn't find here in town." "And does it really work?" In response, Michael took a small watering can and poured water into the system. Tom observed with growing interest as the liquid passed through the various filters and emerged clarified in the reservoir. "Impressive," he murmured, almost against his will. "This is just a miniature model," explained Robert, taking advantage of the moment of openness. "At the science fair, we'll demonstrate how the system could be implemented in real scale at the school, collecting water from the roofs. It would save thousands of gallons per year and teach students about sustainability in practice." Tom remained silent, observing the small device with an indecipherable expression. For a moment it seemed that something was changing inside him, as if a barrier was slowly dissolving. "Why don't you come to the science fair next week, Mr. Evans?" invited Robert cautiously. "You'll see Michael presenting the full project. You can judge for yourself the educational value of what we're doing." Tom looked at Robert with renewed distrust, but less intense. "And this fair, is it open to parents?" "Of course," replied Robert. "In fact, family support is fundamental to the children's success. Ms. Evans has already confirmed her attendance." The mention of his ex-wife seemed to provoke a contradictory reaction in Tom, annoyance, but also a strange sense of competition. "Well, in that case," he began, still reluctant, "perhaps I'll show up. To support my son, of course." Michael could barely hide his astonishment. He looked at Robert, who carefully maintained a neutral expression, although his eyes revealed a cautious satisfaction. "That would be great, Dad," said Michael, trying not to appear excessively enthusiastic, fearing that any exaggerated demonstration might make Tom back down. "But this doesn't mean I approve of this whole situation," warned Tom, raising a finger toward Robert. "I still have my doubts about your intentions, Sanders." "It's your right as a father," conceded Robert with a respectful nod. "I just ask that you give Michael the chance to complete what he started. He deserves that." After a moment of internal deliberation, Tom rigidly nodded. "He can finish the project, but only this week until the fair, and I want to be present at least one of these meetings to see how everything works." "Dad, you don't need to—" "That's my condition, Michael," interrupted Tom, firm but not aggressive. "Either that or we go home right now." Michael looked at Robert, who gave a slight affirmative nod. "It will be a pleasure to have you at our next session, Mr. Evans," said the millionaire, extending his hand in a gesture of peace. After a moment of hesitation, Tom shook the offered hand, although his grip was tense and brief. "Tomorrow, same time," he confirmed, looking at Michael, "and no more lies, understood?" "Yes, Dad," replied the boy, relieved by this small victory, although aware that the bigger battle had not yet been won. Tom left the library with heavy steps, casting a last suspicious look at Robert before crossing the door. When he disappeared, Michael let out an audible sigh of relief. "That was intense," commented Robert, allowing himself to sit again. "I'm sorry, Mr. Robert," murmured Michael, embarrassed. "My dad can be very protective," suggested Robert gently. Michael shrugged. "I guess so. But he wasn't even here until a few weeks ago. I don't understand why he suddenly cares so much about what I do." Robert considered his words carefully before responding. "Sometimes, Michael, people only recognize the value of something when they realize that others value it too. Maybe your father is beginning to see in you what others have seen for a long time." The boy reflected on this, turning his attention back to the project. "Do you think He'll really come tomorrow? I believe so, replied Robert. And that might be a good thing, you know. An opportunity for him to understand what we're doing here. Michael didn't seem entirely convinced, but agreed with a nod. He resumed his work on the project despite his concentration being visibly shaken by recent events. The following afternoon, to Michael's surprise, Tom appeared punctually at the public library. He wore a neater shirt than usual and had even put on a discreet cologne, signs that didn't go unnoticed by Robert or Michael himself. Good afternoon, greeted Tom with an uncomfortable formality. I came to observe the workshop. Welcome, Mr. Evans, replied Robert cordially. We're just discussing the final details of the presentation for the fair. 3 other students were present, Jason, Maria and Ethan, each working on their own projects under the alternating guidance of Robert and Lucas. The atmosphere was relaxed but focused, with the children exchanging ideas and suggestions among themselves. Tom sat at a distance that allowed him to observe without directly interfering. His expression oscillated between distrust and genuine curiosity as he observed the group's dynamics. Gradually, as the afternoon progressed, his posture relaxed. What seemed to impress him most was the way Robert interacted with the children, not as a businessman supervising subordinates, but as a mentor genuinely interested in their ideas. He didn't give ready-made answers, but asked questions that stimulated the students themselves to find solutions. What if we increased the angle of inclination here? Suggested Michael to Robert, pointing to a part of the collection system. I think the water would flow faster. Interesting, replied Robert, but what would happen to the filtration if the water passed too quickly through the filtering materials? Michael frowned, thoughtful. Maybe it wouldn't filter properly. We'd need a larger compartment to compensate for the speed. Exactly, smiled Robert, clearly proud. It's always a balance between efficiency and effectiveness. Great reasoning, Michael. Tom observed the interaction with growing interest. There was something in the dynamic between Robert and the students that didn't fit the narrative he had constructed, that of the manipulative businessman using children for his own ends. The genuineness of Robert's enthusiasm was hard to deny, even for someone so predisposed to distrust. At the end of the session, when the children were putting away their materials, Tom approached Robert. I have to admit, he began in a lower tone so that only Robert could hear, it wasn't quite what I expected. What did you expect exactly, Mr. Evans? Asked Robert, without confrontation. Tom shrugged. I'm not sure exactly. Something more corporate, perhaps, with you dictating orders, telling them exactly what to do, not this. This freedom. They really seem to be developing their own ideas. Robert smiled. Because they are. My role here is not to tell them what to do, but to help them realize what they've already imagined. He paused, looking at Michael, who was animatedly talking with Jason about some adjustment to the project. Your son has a brilliant mind, Mr. Evans. All he needed were tools and a bit of guidance to transform his ideas into reality. Tom observed his son for a moment, a complex expression on his face, pride, confusion, perhaps even a hint of regret. Has he always been like this? Always had these ideas? According to Miss Jennifer, yes, since very young. Robert looked directly at Tom. Michael told me he started drawing his projects after his grandfather passed away. It was a way to keep the connection alive with him, since Mr. William was the one who encouraged him the most. The mention of his deceased father-in-law seemed to deeply affect Tom. He looked away, visibly uncomfortable. William was always good with him. Better than me, certainly. It's never too late to change that, suggested Robert cautiously. Tom didn't respond immediately. He seemed to be waging an internal battle between wounded pride and something nobler struggling to emerge. The science fair, he said finally. When is it again? Next Wednesday, at 9 in the morning, in the school gymnasium. Tom nodded. Slowly. I'll be there. On the morning of the science fair, the gymnasium of Lincoln Elementary School was unrecognizable. Colorful panels decorated the walls, carefully organized tables displayed the various projects, and an improvised stage had been set up for the main presentations. Reporters from local newspapers and even a regional TV crew circulated, interviewing anxious students and proud teachers. Michael arrived early, accompanied by Ms. Linda. He wore his best shirt and carefully carried a box with his project. His eyes constantly scanned the entrance to the gymnasium. "He'll come, son," assured Linda, noticing the boy's concern. "Your father promised." "He's promised many things before," murmured Michael, unable to hide the disappointment in his voice. The fair began punctually at 9. Principal Sarah made an emotional speech about the transformation of the school in recent months, thanking the New Horizons Foundation for the support. Lucas and Robert were on stage, smiling but discreet, both wearing simple clothes that didn't draw attention to their status. The project presentations began with the youngest students: small scientific experiments, models of sustainable cities, panels about clean energy. Each project reflected the new spirit of innovation that had taken over the school. The time for Michael's presentation approached, and there was still no sign of Tom. The boy tried to concentrate on his presentation, mentally reviewing each point he needed to address, but his eyes kept returning to the gymnasium door. "Next presentation," announced Ms. Jennifer. "Michael Evans from 5th grade with his project Rainwater Collection and Filtration System, Sustainability in Practice." A polite applause filled the environment as Michael climbed onto the stage, carrying his model. He positioned it carefully on the demonstration table, connected a small hose to the system, and adjusted the microphone to his height. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice initially trembling but gaining firmness as he proceeded. "My project was born from a simple concern: how can we save treated water in our school and community?" Michael explained the principles behind his system, demonstrating how the water passed through the different stages of filtration. He showed graphs that he had prepared with Jason's help, calculating the potential savings for the school if the system were implemented in real scale. "With an average precipitation of 60 inches per year in our region," he explained, surprisingly at ease in front of the audience, "we could collect approximately 80,000 gallons of water annually just from the school roof." As he spoke, his eyes occasionally continued searching among the spectators. Robert, seated in the front row, noticed his distraction and followed his gaze. Understanding the reason, he gave Michael an encouraging smile as if to say, "Continue, you're doing very well." It was when Michael was reaching the conclusion of his presentation that the side door of the gymnasium opened. Tom entered hurriedly, adjusting his tie, an item of clothing that Michael had never seen him wear before. Their gazes met, and his father discreetly waved, a silent apology for being late. Michael's face visibly lit up. With renewed confidence, he concluded, "This system is not just a practical solution to save resources, but also an educational tool. By implementing it in our school, each student will be able to follow the process, learn about sustainability in practice, and take this knowledge to their own homes. Because small changes, when adopted by many, can transform the world. Thank you." The applause that followed was warm and genuine. Ms. Linda wiped away discreet tears of pride while Robert smiled broadly. But it was Tom's reaction that most surprised Michael. His father applauded enthusiastically, a proud smile stamped on his face. After the presentation, while Michael answered questions from judges and visitors interested in his project, Tom approached Robert, who was observing the scene from a respectful distance. "I was wrong," said Tom without preamble, his voice low but clear. "About you, about your intentions." Robert turned to him, surprised by the direct admission. "How did you reach that conclusion?" "By observing, listening, seeing my son shine." Tom gestured toward Michael, now surrounded by a small group of people interested in his project. He never had this confidence before, this joy in sharing his ideas. "He always had the potential," replied Robert. "He just needed someone who believed in him." "Someone who wasn't me," completed Tom with evident bitterness. "I spent 4 years away chasing empty dreams while my son was creating things that really matter." "It's never too late to start over," offered Robert with genuine kindness. "Michael still needs a father very much, someone who supports him, unconditionally." Tom nodded slowly. "I don't know if I deserve this second chance, but I'll try." He extended his hand to Robert. "And I want to apologize for the accusations, for the suspicions. I was projecting my own insecurities onto you. Robert accepted the handshake with a sincere smile. We all make mistakes, Mr. Evans. The important thing is to recognize them and move forward. The science fair continued for the rest of the day with Michael and his project receiving honorable mention from the jury. When the event finally ended, the Evans family, Michael, Linda, and Tom, walked home together, something that hadn't happened in years. I'm very proud of you, son, said Tom, walking alongside Michael, who was pushing his bicycle. Your project was by far the best at the fair. Thanks, Dad, replied Michael, still a bit wary of this new version of his father, but pleased with the change. I'm glad you came. Me too, agreed Tom, looking briefly at Linda, who was walking a bit ahead. I realized how much I've been missing all these years. Linda looked back, her face a mask of contradictory emotions, cautious hope mixed with the memory of old broken promises. Mr. Robert said they're going to implement my system at the school for real, commented Michael, excited. Not just as a demonstration, but in full size. They'll use the water for the community garden and for the bathrooms. That's amazing, Michael, exclaimed Tom, genuinely impressed. Your name will forever be in the history of that school. It's not for the recognition, explained the boy thoughtfully. It's because it will truly help. It will save water, teach other students about sustainability. Tom looked at his son with an expression that mixed admiration and a kind of internal discomfort. The painful recognition that he had helped create something beautiful without realizing it, and had almost destroyed it out of pure selfishness. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following weeks, a silent transformation occurred in Oakville. The rainwater collection system designed by Michael was effectively implemented at Lincoln Elementary School, with explanatory panels formally crediting him as the creator. The official inauguration was attended by local authorities and journalists, transforming the boy into a small local celebrity. Tom, surprisingly, remained in town. He rented a small house a few blocks from Ms. Linda and got a job at the building materials store. It wasn't the glamorous job he had always dreamed of having in the city, but for the first time in years, there seemed to be a genuine purpose in his actions. Robert continued visiting the school regularly, now openly assuming his role as founder of the New Horizons Foundation. The speculations and gossip about his secret intentions gradually gave way to admiration for the concrete work he was doing in the community. It was on a Sunday afternoon, about 2 months after the science fair, that Michael was pedaling his old bicycle on the same dirt road where it all began. The school had entered recess, and he was taking advantage of the free time to explore the surroundings, always with his new project notebook in his backpack. As he passed the exact spot where he had found Robert with the flat tire, he noticed a familiar car parked in the shade of a maple tree. Robert was sitting on a nearby rock, apparently lost in thought, looking at the horizon. "Mr. Robert," called Michael, braking his bicycle, "are you having problems again?" Robert smiled upon seeing the boy. "Not this time. Just remembering. Today marks exactly 4 months since our first meeting." Michael got off his bicycle and approached. "You came all the way here just for that?" "Actually," replied Robert, "I came to say goodbye. I'll be traveling for a few months, visiting other communities where the foundation plans to start similar projects." "Oh." Michael couldn't hide his disappointment. "For how long?" "Probably until the beginning of the next school year. But don't worry. Lucas will remain here supervising the continuation of the project at the school, and I promise to return for the inauguration of the new science wing." Michael nodded, trying not to show how much the news affected him. In just a few months, Robert had become a constant and important presence in his life, a mentor, a friend, someone who saw potential where others saw only childish dreams. "I have something for you," said Robert, taking a small box from his car. "A farewell gift, let's say." Michael accepted the box, surprised. Upon opening it, he found a modern tablet protected by a sturdy case. "Wow, is this really for me?" Robert laughed at the boy's shocked expression. "Yes, it's for you. It already comes with design programs installed so you can develop your projects in more detail. And it has satellite internet connection, so it will work even here where the signal is poor." Michael was speechless, alternating glances between the sophisticated gift and the man in front of him. This must be really expensive. I can't. Accept it. Yes, you can, insisted Robert gently. Consider it an investment in your future, in the future of all the people who will benefit from your ideas. Michael hugged the tablet against his chest, emotional. Thank you, Mr. Robert. I'll use it every day, I promise. I'm sure you will. Robert smiled, but there was a hesitation in his eyes, as if he wanted to say something more. Michael, before I leave, I want you to know something. What happened here on this road 4 months ago, it wasn't a coincidence. What do you mean? Robert sat down again on the rock, indicating for Michael to do the same. When I lost my wife, Kate, I also lost my direction. I spent 2 years immersed in empty work, accumulating more wealth than I could ever use, while ignoring the promise I made to her on her deathbed. Robert carefully chose the word, avoiding directly mentioning death. I promised I would use our fortune to make a real difference in people's lives, to create opportunities where none existed. Michael listened attentively, sensing that he was about to hear something important. The day we met, I wasn't lost by chance. I had come to Oakville specifically to see the school after reading about its difficulties in a state education department report. The tire really did go flat, that wasn't planned. Robert laughed softly. But our conversation, you showing me your notebook, that changed everything. So you were already thinking about helping the school before? Yes, but in a distant, bureaucratic way. It was just going to be another foundation project, a number on a spreadsheet. You humanized everything, Michael. You showed me the real face of the children we could help, the concrete difference we could make. Michael absorbed the revelation in silence, processing its implications. Why are you telling me this now? He finally asked. Because I want you to understand something fundamental. Robert leaned slightly forward, his eyes meeting the boy's. Sometimes we think that small gestures don't matter, that a single person, especially a child, can't change things. But you did change things. Michael, your gesture of generosity that day, offering your bicycle to a stranger, sharing your ideas without expecting anything in return, that triggered something much bigger than you could imagine. Michael felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and humility. I just did what Grandpa William would have done. And that's exactly how the best things happen in the world, smiled Robert, when we act from the heart, inspired by those we love, without calculating advantages. Never forget that, Michael. It's your greatest strength. The two remained in silence for a few moments, contemplating the simple landscape of the dirt road and the green fields around, an apparently insignificant setting that had been the stage for a transformative encounter. I need to go, said Robert finally, getting up. I have a plane to catch in Boston, but we'll stay in touch. The tablet has my personal email and phone number. Use them whenever you need, or even when you just want to share a new idea. Michael also stood up, holding the tablet with one hand and the bicycle with the other. I'll miss you, Mr. Robert. I'll miss you too, Michael, but I know that when I return I'll find your notebook even fuller of brilliant ideas. Robert extended his hand formally, as if treating the boy as an equal. Until soon, friend. Michael ignored the extended hand and, on impulse, hugged Robert. The man, initially surprised, returned the hug with genuine emotion. Until soon, Mr. Robert. As he watched Robert's car disappear around the bend in the road, Michael felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. He mounted his bicycle and pedaled, back home where his parents, now in a cautiously renewed relationship, were waiting for him for Sunday lunch. Upon entering the house, he found Tom and Linda preparing the meal together, a domestic scene that until a few months ago would have seemed impossible. "Look what Mr. Robert gave me before traveling," he exclaimed, showing the tablet. Tom, who at another time would have immediately questioned the intentions behind the expensive gift, just smiled. "That's great, son. It will be perfect for developing that new project you showed me yesterday. Have you seen the plans for the vertical garden?" asked Michael, excited, turning on the tablet. "Now I can draw with much more detail." Linda observed the scene with a serene smile. Seeing her son and his father leaning over the tablet, enthusiastically discussing ideas to improve the community, was something she had stopped dreaming about years ago. The following week, the news that the rainwater collection project developed by Michael had been selected as a model for implementation in 20 other schools in the region brought a new wave of pride to small Oakville. The local newspaper published an article highlighting the young inventor and his millionaire mentor, a title that made Michael laugh, although it secretly made him proud. On a quiet afternoon, while working on a new project on the tablet, Michael received an email from Robert. It contained only a photo. Robert next to a group of children in a rural community in the Midwest, all holding small notebooks identical to the one Michael used to record his ideas. The message simply said, "Your legacy is spreading, eagerly awaiting the new projects, RS." Michael smiled at the screen, a feeling of contentment filling him. Perhaps his grandpa William had been right after all. You didn't need to wait until you were an adult to have good ideas, nor to make a difference in the world. Sometimes all that was needed was an old bicycle, a notebook of ideas, and the courage to help a stranger on a deserted road. Closing the email, he opened a new drawing file on the tablet. His most recent project, an irrigation system for the community garden that would use the water collected by his first invention, was beginning to take detailed shape on the digital screen. In his mind, however, he already visualized something much bigger, a network of young inventors in schools across the country, sharing ideas, solving local problems, transforming their communities. Who knows, thought Michael with a smile, one day he himself might be the millionaire mentor for another child on some distant road. The end of the story. So, what did you think? Did Michael make the right choice by following his heart and helping the stranger on the road? Share in the comments your opinion about this encounter that changed so many lives. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories like this one.